film, which are structured as multiple frames. There are, in fact, four frames. The movie itself, the film within the film, which is to be the director's feature film debut, the story of a separate TV drama, which is caught on this footage, and the story of a woman who died during the shoot of this drama, TV drama. The moment when these separate frames suddenly all connect together is one of sheer terror for the audience. This disrupted spatial coordination caused by overlapping frames is closely connected to my next topic, the disruption of the structure of time. Warner Marshall identifies modularity as a structural characteristic of J-horror created by directors such as Takashi Shimizu. This refers to how these films are made out of modules with confused and confusing timelines, and often make it difficult for audiences to attempt to recreate the stories. Ju-on, for example, consists of 6 sequences that are named after each of the characters who become victims of the ghost. Most of these fragments end with the main character dying from the curse. They are, however, not ordered chronologically, so the viewer's attempt to reconfigure this non-linear narrative structure will at times jump back to the past and then to the future. Clues for this process are provided through the crisscrossing references that exist in these fragments, and these strands combine to create a loosely knit web. But as those of you who have seen the film already know, it is in fact impossible for the audience to reconfigure these episodes chronologically. Ju-on aims to put its audience into disjointed time with its ending that suddenly brings together strands from multiple timelines that simply could not coexist. In analyzing this episodic structure, Wada Marciano reverts to the media environment surrounding the consumption and reception of videos and DVDs. Her conclusion is that J-horror is closely linked to the fragmented manner in which the work was viewed in the home environment, starting with the origins of the genre, such as the TV program Gakkou no Kaidan. The chapter format of DVDs and the episodic nature of these works made it easier to watch only partial sequences or to hit pause, rewind, and view scenes that had been initially missed instead of following an entire film from beginning to the end. And this, she argues, is deeply connected to the horror that these movies create. It is true that the Ju-on series has a structure that is suited for viewing specific parts, as it is based on the chapters that constitute DVDs. This also applies to the omnibus format, which brings together shows that were originally broadcast on television and anthology films, where different directors created separate segments. Neither can one deny the fact that this fragmented nature is intertextual and that this structure is suited for adaptation to other media, such as manga, TV, novels, and games. In contrast to this view, the defining characteristic of J-horror that I would like to emphasize is that in any given work, it is possible to perceive the world as a fragmented structure, which reflexively cross-references in a loosely knit web, which in its entirety becomes a driving force of fear. I, of course, am not trying to argue that the cinematic traditional way of viewing, where the entire film is watched from the beginning to the end, is the only way to fully appreciate such work. The reverse is true. I believe that even when only snatches of the world are seen, the strength of fear generated by J-horror exists in the possibilities for partial connections as well as compounded relations between fragments and other fragments that latently reference them. And the time flows in each of these fragments impossibly coexist in these specific moments of connection, making time disjointed, which is at the core of these fields. Elements such as multiple frames and the interconnecting nested frame structure also relate to this situation. I have discussed the spatial and temporal aspect of J-horror. The final issue that I will address is repetition and return in these fields. As many scholars have already noted, I need more.
Yeah, okay, you get more.
Okay. The source of fear in horror films lies in the repeated resurrection and return of, for example, the monster. There are the slasher cycles where mass murderers return in continuing installments, and there are also remakes of the same horror story plot or story structure that are realized by different creators, which in effect resurrect these monsters. In fact, as a genre, horror draws its power to affect from the repetition that comes from the format of series and cycles. To rephrase this more precisely, this repetition does not function in isolation, for a repeat must always be accompanied by the difference that naturally ensues. So both elements in fact form the core of this category. How should we consider the element of repetition in J-horror? Remakes of Asian horror in Hollywood and other regions, for example, can also be understood as a variety of repetition and return. In such cases, the regionally specific is translated into expressions that are culturally neutral. Brice Lim looked at the issue of remakes in translating time. The Ring, the remake of Ring, and the Clutch, the remake of Ju-on, both emphasize the circle of cause and effect in the structure of the narrative and clearly depicted the individual personality of the protagonist who tried to unravel the mystery. The Grudge, in particular, did away with the episodic format of the original and reconfigured an integrated linear structure, which thoroughly evened out the major characteristic of J-horror, where multiple timelines coexist without merging together. In either case, the structures were altered to make it easier for audiences to identify with the protagonist. Lim identifies the source of J-horror's success in this process, where Hollywood took the diverse and different types of horror movies from various parts of Asia, rendered them homogeneous and uniform, and produced remakes of what was dubbed Asian horror in a style that was suited for US audience reception. Lim sees a negative aspect here in the appropriation and designation of regional cultures. Perhaps there are issues that relate to dichotomies between the regional and the universal, the domestic and the transnational, where the latter acts upon the former to make it more homogeneous. When, however, the discussion is expanded to consider urban legends, which provide much of the source material for J-horror, the simple relationship of the original and the copy does not fit comfortably. J-horror stories are not actually based on an original text in a strict sense, for they are an aggregate of variants of fragmented text that cross-reference one another and continue to evolve. As earlier analyses have already noted, Ju-on and even Rings are formed out of multiple and disparate narrative fragments. It is also possible to claim that in such J-horror cycles there is no specific original, only the repetition of recycled spirals, a rhizome network. A characteristic of J-horror is the icons of terror such as Kayako or Sadako. And there may be counter-arguments that Hollywood's cultural translation eradicates regionally specific mystical and folkloric elements. Such icons of terror, however, are ambiguous when in any claim to cultural specificity or identification. As Juno PMU has noted, Sadako's long disheveled hair covers her features, so she almost completely lacks her horrifying face, which should trigger cultural specificity or emotional responses such as fear. It is more appropriate to describe her iconography in terms of a patchwork of parts, such as her long white dress, her tense hands, her bare feet, and her black hair. Sadako's characteristic composite of parts is also shared by countless Asian horror films, although I will not attempt to list them all. This slide shows copies of Sadako. Sadako's partial icons are copied, dubbed, and repeated in an interactive process, and guarantees the fear that these generate, and this fragmented existence also relate to the representational style of pre-existing paranormal videos that I have already discussed in connection with the concept of space. This also includes the representation of parts or fragments, such as the hands or the feet. The distinctive jerky bodily movements on video footage typified by Sadako are another example. This, in fact, is derived from playing and sequence backwards and other photographic tricks that characterize these paranormal videos. I should also add that the techniques of J-horror that have already been analyzed in connection with the nature of space and time, seen in aspects such as cinematography, editing, and sound mixing, are partial elements of this aggregate, which may be even shared by Hollywood horror films from 2000 onwards. It may be that looking at the specific versus the universal and the appropriation by the latter does not fully grasp the essence of J-horror, where fear is born out of the cross-referencing fragments with no origin, which gain their ability to shock through their aggregation. When considering repetition in J-horror, there is also intermediate repetition, which could be regarded as a representation of the friction and distortion that occurs between multiple media. The TV monitor, which is magnified on the screen, the noise from videotapes that are paused, rewound, and replayed over and over again, all are factors that go beyond reflecting the setting where the viewing experience is fragmented. These are the traces of friction from intermediate repetition and may be signs of rebellion against homogeneity and uniformity caused by digital media. This friction in the repetitive representation of mechanical reproduction may, I believe, be considered together with the concept of the vernacular, which is part of my title. The vernacular is a concept that indicates cross-cultural transversal and mobility. When modern reproduction technologies such as photography or filmmaking are introduced to specific locales, this advanced technology may undergo transformations brought about by the indigenous traditions, customs, or old media and become a strange amalgam. The processes where these outputs are transposed to another place via reproduction technology and alter the uniqueness of other regions is how the vernacular is transmitted. Under these circumstances, the vernacular can also become a medium that actually highlights some of the numerous possibilities that were inherent in the original technology for mechanical production in this process of intermediate repetition. This is the argument advanced by Geoffrey Bachchan, who focuses on vernacular photography. It should also be possible to regard J-horror from the angle of the vernacular, which is a key point that I wish to make in this presentation. Thank you very much for your attention.
Thank you very much.